Or you got yourself an airbrush but you have no idea what paint to use? Well, this video will help you figure that out. Let's get into it right now. So I like using Trident paint. It's a water-based paint. You can mix it with their reducer and it's great for all surfaces, including paper, t-shirts, automotive. They're automotive grade pigments and they won't fade, and there's many different colors and kits available. The other paint that I like to use is the Createx illustration colors. These are a water-based paint as well. They can also be used on automotive projects, but Createx also has the Wicked range, which is probably better suited for that. I do love these though because they flow really well, and they can also be manipulated with an eraser pencil or knife because they have a longer workability window, and you can also thin them really well with their 4011 reducer. Our Trident reducer works really well in them as well. The other great thing about the Createx colors is that they are transparent, whereas the Trident paints are a lot more opaque. So using both of them is really helpful when creating any artwork. So even though you can use the Trident paints as well as Createx colors for any automotive applications, and then you can seal them with a 2-pack clear, paints like House of Color and DNA have amazing colors, base coats, special effects paints, and things that you just can't get in those water-based colors. So if you do want to take your automotive project to the next level, then you should look into either House of Color or DNA paints. They both have a fantastic range of custom paint colors, and all of these obviously can be sprayed through a spray gun, no problem at all. And even though I've used a lot of the water-based style candies, I still prefer using urethane ones. One thing to keep in mind, these paints are definitely more toxic, and you want to be wearing a proper respirator, something like this 2-spray respirator, or the one I use is the Sundstrom, to protect yourself from breathing in any of the paint overspray. And if you are going to use any of these and then clear coat them, then you really need to be wearing a proper air-fed mask in a spray booth in a controlled environment when clear coating, because the clear coats have a hardener, so the paint is then mixed up with that hardener and some reducer before you paint, and that way it'll completely harden and protect all of your urethane base coats once your artwork's complete. But again, using these products, you really need to err on the side of caution and spray in a controlled environment with the proper professional safety gear. If you do not have that, I'd highly advise that you don't do this part yourself. You just stick to the airbrushing and then get a professional to clear coat all of your artwork. Okay, so I'm going to go through some mixing ratios that I like using with the Trident paint. This will be the same for Createx. I pretty much run them at the same ratios. So Trident has reducer that you use to thin your paint. Now you can see the one on the left says reducer and this one says reducer concentrate. The difference is the reducer is ready to use, so you can just add that straight into your color at the ratios that I'm going to explain, whereas the reducer concentrate, you can see from the lid, has a mixing ratio of 1:9, so 1 parts concentrate to 9 parts bottled water. You need to thin this down before adding this to your paint. So a lot of the kits that you can get in the Trident paint, like this 50ml primary set, will have the 50ml colors. This one also comes with 4 free mixing bottles, but you can see in here it's got a reducer concentrate. So essentially that bottle is going to make 500ml of usable reducer, which you can then use to thin out all of your paints. So the first ratio that I'm going to show you is the 1:1 ratio, so equal parts. I'm going to mix up this magenta for you. I'm going to pour that into the bottle. We'll just do a little bit. I mean, this is quite a bit more than you're going to need anyway, but that's why I mix them up in these bottles and I can then store them. And I've got some Trident reducer in this squirty bottle that I use. And now I'm going to add in the reducer. So just continuing to squirt that in until we're at about the 1:1 mark, which I would say we're pretty close. If it's not 100%, it won't matter. Close enough is good enough. If you want to measure it, then you can get plenty of different bottles that will have measurements on them. But like I said, it's not really that essential to have it 100% accurate. Now I'll give it a good shake. And now that one is ready to rock, and I'll test that in a minute. I'm just going to mix up the other ratio. So this one, as I mentioned, is the 1:1. This one I like using at around 30 psi, and it's great for all-round airbrushing, and you can still do some detailing, but the next ratio is what I use for detailing. So let's go ahead and mix that one up. Okay, so the violet now I want to mix up to my detail ratio, and this one I usually spray it around 18 to 20 psi. Now, because this is a 50 ml bottle, you could do it with drops, but I'm going to find it hard to do accurate drops with this squirty bottle. So it's a 70-30 mix, so 70% reducer, 30% paint. Now this bottle is a 50 ml bottle, so what I've done is I've halved the ratio. So the 70 I've dropped that down to 35, and the 30 I've dropped down to 15 ml. So that'll virtually fill this bottle, because the 70-30 obviously you're working off 100 ml. So I hope I haven't confused you too much with the maths, but what we're going to do is add the reducer in first. So I'm going to mix up a fair batch of it just to illustrate this. Again, I'm doing this by eye. This one you might want to use a measured cup so you have it a bit more accurate. Let's say so half of that. So we're probably going to go, let's say probably about there is close enough to 35 ml, and then the rest I'm going to fill up with the paint. So you can see quite a bit more reducer. Now keep in mind, this is a lot harder to airbrush with. So you will get spidering. It can be very difficult for people that are new to airbrushing, so don't get disheartened. You have to have a fair amount of skill to be able to airbrush with this ratio. Just going to drop the marble in, give this one a good shake, and then I'll demo both. Okay, so adding some of that 1-to-1 mix into the airbrush so I can demonstrate how this flows. I'm spraying at 30 psi. So you just adjust and lower your PSI according to what you need, so you'll know if it's spraying smoothly, then you've got really good mix and PSI, but if it's too thick, you can up your PSI or you can over thin your paint. But you can see this is at that 1-to-1 ratio. Now I'm spraying with my needle cap on. I prefer to take that off. It just allows for easier tip dry management, and I can also see the end of the needle, and that way it allows for finer detail if necessary. But you can see this airbrush, it's the Awada HPC S Eclipse with a 0.35mm needle nozzle setup, and it's spraying perfectly at this PSI. You're able to do general airbrushing, no problem at all, and if I want to go up close and do some fine lines and dots, I can as well with this ratio, so no problem at all. So this is definitely a great starting mix. So if you're just starting out with your airbrush, run with that 1-to-1. Now even if the airbrush paint says that it's ready made, or ready mixed, should I say, I still thin it out. I just prefer having less tip drying. I'd rather coat over something a few times. And keep in mind that with this ratio you are going to get quicker coverage, so this is also really good if you want to do t-shirts, that sort of thing. The thinner ratio will take more coverage, however you'll get again less tip drying, so you just got to weigh it up. Alright, I'll go ahead now and I'll demonstrate the thinner ratio. So with this thinner ratio, I'll reduce my PSI down to about 18 to 20 PSI, and I would normally use something like a Micron or the GSI Krios or any of my brushes that have those 0.18 or 0.20mm needle nozzle setups. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to stick with the Eclipse so that you can see a direct comparison between the mixes. So adding that thinner mix in, and you can hear the difference at that 18 to 20 psi. Now I'm going to work back over this page, that way you can see a direct comparison. So you can see how smooth that paint is now. So I can still do reasonable broad spray. Colouring in's not a problem, but you definitely need to build it up. It's going to take a little bit longer to build, and then if I'm doing fine stuff, you can see how fine I can go now with that mix. Again, this mix will work even better in the 0.18s, but you can definitely notice there's some really fine dots there, especially in this area here, and that's all to do with just dropping that PSI and running your paint thinner. So there you go, you can see nice fine detail even out of a 0.35mm needle nozzle. You can go super fine with the Eclipse, and that's what I mean, it's all to do with your paint mixing ratio. Another key tip is to strain your paint. So I didn't do that, but if you've got paint that you store, then it's definitely a good idea to strain your paint, because little dried bits of paint can get up around the edge of your paint lid and then drop in the paint cup and give you all sorts of issues. So keep that in mind too.